they're not the ones you see on the news. They're not the ones who are getting standing ovations or headlines. They're not even the ones who are causing chaos or fighting for attention in all the wrong ways. No, these are the ones that we're talking about today. These are the quiet ones, if you will, the invisible ones. And to many, they're the less urgent ones. They're the men that society has forgotten. And it's not because they aren't valuable. It's not because they aren't trying, but because somewhere along the way, the world moved on and it didn't look back. These are the ones who slipped between the cracks, who stopped being seen long before they stopped even showing up. They're the men who were told to be strong, but they were never taught how to be seen. They're told to work hard, but they were never told that they were worthy apart from what they could produce. They were told to stand tall, but left alone when life brought them to their knees. And here's a hard truth, though. A society that measures a man's worth by his utility is a society that leaves him behind the moment that he stumbles. We don't like to talk about these men, though. They don't really fit into neat narratives about success or empowerment. They don't drive clicks or travel or fuel outrage. They just fade. But their fading has consequences for them and for us. Because when we forget the quiet ones, we lose more than individuals. We actually lose a part of our collective soul. And you can see it in the stats, right? Men are increasingly isolated, increasingly lonely, increasingly adrift. Suicide rates are climbing higher for men, especially as they age, and workforce participation among men has declined. Educational attainment among young men is lagging behind, and marriage rates are plummeting, and not by accident either. It's easy to point to these figures and shrug and say, well, that's their problem, right? But the deeper we dig, the clearer it becomes. This isn't just a personal issue. It's a societal wound. A culture that abandons its men abandons its future. Because when men feel like they have no place or no purpose or no people, they disengage. And disengaged men don't just hurt themselves, they leave gaps in families, in communities, in economies, in the very fabric of our society. And we're all less connected because so many men feel no connection at all. But let's go deeper. Why do men get left behind? It's not because they aren't trying. It's because they're trying in a system that's rigged against the emotional needs that they aren't even allowed to name. And from a young age, many boys are taught that emotions are dangerous, that vulnerability is weakness, and that success is measured in trophies and salaries and in stoicism. And so they build walls and they armor up and they silence parts of themselves that might ask for help or for love or even for belonging. And then when life inevitably cracks, like the armor that they're wearing, when the job is lost, for example, or the relationship fails, when the health deteriorates, and there's nothing left to catch them, there's no community, no support, no network, no language to even describe the pain inside, that's when we see the trouble. It's not that these men don't feel, it's that they were never actually taught how to be felt by others or even by themselves. But here's the kicker. When we leave these men behind emotionally or relationally or even socially, we don't just leave them in isolation, we leave them in danger. See, loneliness isn't just sad, it's lethal. And it's been compared to smoking a pack of cigarettes a day in terms of health impact. It increases the risk of heart disease, of stroke, of depression, and cognitive decline. And the longer it lingers, the harder it becomes to reverse. But perhaps the most insidious effect of all of this is how loneliness warps a person's relationship to themselves. When you're alone too long, you start believing that you deserve it. And you stop reaching out. And you stop hoping. And you stop believing that you're even worth rescuing in the first place. And eventually the pain turns into something else. It turns into bitterness and despair. Or in the worst cases, it turns into numbness that's so profound that it feels like the only escape is permanent. And we cannot afford to ignore this. Not if we care for our communities. Not if we care about the future of our generations. Not if we care about humanity itself. Because leaving men behind isn't just a men's issue. It's a human issue. And it affects women, it affects children, it affects families, workplaces, and neighborhoods. It ripples outward, touching everything. And when men are disconnected, then relationships suffer. When men feel unwanted, marriages break down. When men believe that they have no future, economies shrink. And when men lose hope, society loses its stability. Ignoring this does not make it go away, though. It just ensures that the wound festers longer and deeper and harder to heal. And yet, despite all of this, the men that we're talking about rarely ask for attention. They rarely demand the spotlight. They rarely cry out. Why is this? It's because they've been taught not to. Taught that real men don't complain. Real men endure, right? And that real men are like islands. But islands erode, slowly and silently, invisibly, until one day they're just gone. And by that time when we notice, it's too late. The tragedy here is not that these men suffer. The tragedy is that the suffering is seen as acceptable, as normal, or as unavoidable. Because we've built this culture where male pain is invisible until it becomes unignorable, usually in the form of violence or addiction or death. Only then do we ask, what went wrong? But by that time, the story's already ended, sadly, and we never go back far enough to see where it all really began. It began when that little boy learned to swallow his tears, when he learned that showing emotion makes him weak. It happened when he learned that his value was conditional, dependent on how well he performed or produced or provided. It began when he realized that no one would come for him if he fell. That vulnerability was a liability, and that his worth was tied to his usefulness. And so he adapted, and he hardened, and he disappeared emotionally long before he disappeared physically. And it's tempting to think the solution is simple, to tell men it's okay to just open up, right? Encourage them to talk about their feelings. But the wounds aren't surface level. They're systemic, they're cultural, they're relational, and they go deep. Telling men to just open up without actually changing the environments that they live in is like telling someone to swim with a weight tied to their ankles. They don't just need permission to feel, they also need a culture that doesn't punish them for doing so. They need connection. They need intimacy. They need integrity, not just in themselves, but in the systems and the communities that they belong to. Integrity, for me, means aligning what we say with what we do. And if we say we value men's well-being, we can't just leave them to fend for themselves. We have to build structures like schools and workplaces and social networks that foster real belonging. We have to create spaces where men are not judged solely by what they earn or how tough they appear or how well they can hide their pain. Intimacy is is another piece of this puzzle that's missing. It's just not only romantic intimacy, but emotional intimacy, the ability to be seen and known and accepted without conditions. Many of these forgotten men, they've never experienced what true intimacy is like. They've been performers for their whole life, expected to wear masks of competence and of control and indifference. And they've been told to be pillars, but you see, even pillars crack when they stand alone for too long. And intimacy says you don't have to be perfect to be loved. You don't have to be invulnerable to be valued. And you are not a machine. You are a human being. And when we don't give men that message, they stop seeking connection and they retreat. And their retreat impoverishes all of us. Because every connection not made by them is a richness lost. Every relationship that's not formed is a thread that's missing from the social fabric. We think of connection as optional, like a luxury, but it isn't. It's essential for all of us. And here's something that's critical. We have to stop pretending that abandonment is meritocratic, that the only bad men get left behind, that if someone is struggling, it must be their fault. That's a comforting story that may let some off the hook, but it's not true. You see, many of the men the society forgot did nothing wrong, except for failed to conform to a version of masculinity that was impossible to sustain. They didn't climb high enough on the career ladder, for example, or they didn't make enough in their income. They didn't charm the right person, or they didn't harden themselves fast enough or thoroughly enough. And so these men slipped through the cracks. And it's not because they weren't good enough, but it's because the system was never designed to catch them in the first place. So what would it look like to change that? What would it look like to build a society where men are not left behind? It would look like teaching boys very early on that emotions are not shameful, that strength includes the ability to ask for help, and that being human means that we need others as well. It would look like workplaces that prioritize well-being over burnout, communities that value connection over competition, or families that praise vulnerability as much as they do victory. It would look like rethinking the way we measure success, not by how much you earn or how stoic you are, by how connected and how authentic and how alive you are. It would look like creating rituals of belonging, like restoring mentorship, for example, or reviving friendships, real friendships, not just drinking buddies or networking contacts, but friends who know your heart and not just your resume. And yes, it would also look like more courage from all of us. The courage to reach out first. The courage to ask the deeper questions. The courage to sit with discomfort instead of judging or fixing or fleeing. It would look like listening, not just to the words men say, but to the silences where they can't even find the words yet. It would look like giving men the space to be more than caricatures that they've been handed. It would look like seeing them, like truly seeing them before they have to disappear to prove their pain. There's something sacred about being seen. It's seen not for what you can do, and not for how well you hide your brokenness, but being seen for who you are in all your messy and complicated and unfinished humanity. When we extend that kind of seeing to someone, it's an invitation that says, you are welcome here, exactly as you are. And most of these forgotten men, have never experienced that kind of invitation. They've, they've been evaluated perhaps, and measured, and ranked and rejected, but not welcomed. And over time, rejection starts to feel inevitable and predictable and deserved. So they stop showing up. They stop risking. They shrink their world to a size where they think they can survive in. But survival isn't living though. And this life that's reduced to mere survival is a life that really is half-lived. But here's another uncomfortable truth to consider. Some of the anger that we see in isolated men is not about entitlement. It's about grief. Grief for the friendship that never formed. Grief for the love that they never received. Grief for the futures that they never got to build. But because we don't give men permission to grieve, that sadness often calcifies into rage, into resentment, into bitterness. And when that bitterness festers long enough, it hardens a man from the inside out. It's not because he's evil. It's not because he's broken. But it's because he's human. And humans, we can't metabolize grief alone. We were built for community. We were built for connection, for co-regulation. No one was designed to carry the weight of unprocessed pain by themselves. And yet that's exactly what we ask these men to do. If you've never actually seen a man withdraw from the world, or stop calling, or stop dreaming, or stop believing, you've seen the slow motion collapse of someone who is never meant to walk alone. You've seen the consequence of abandonment dressed up as stoicism. You've seen the cost of a culture that prizes interdependence over interdependence. Interdependence is good, it's necessary, but independence without connection is not freedom, it's exile. And many men are living in emotional exile. Not because they want to, and it's not because they're incapable of connection, but it's because somewhere along the line, they were taught that needing others was shameful. So they sit in their exile, wearing armor that they didn't choose, speaking a language of silence that they never wanted to. The men that we leave behind, they don't always leave obvious signs. They don't always cry out. They don't always act out. Sometimes they just grow quieter, or they shrink smaller, or fade faster. And society calls them failures. But they're not failures. They're just foregone. Written off by a system that only loves men when they are useful, when they're impressive, and when they're winning. The truth is, most of the men that we've forgotten still have so much to give, still have so much to live, so much to give on the inside. They just need someone to believe that before they disappear, that it's possible to see them. This is not about rescuing men, though. It's not about casting them as helpless victims. This is more so about acknowledging a reality that we've ignored for far too long. That people, like all people, need to be seen to thrive. And that dignity is not earned through achievement. It's given freely because existence alone is not enough. It's about creating a culture where men don't have to choose between silence and shame. Where they don't have to earn belonging by performing, and where they don't have to pretend that pain is weakness. It's about offering a different kind of a story, one where masculinity isn't measured by how much you can endure, but instead by how much you're willing to feel, to connect, to be real. And we need to build that kind of a world, not just for the men who are hurting right now, but for the countless of boys who are watching and learning and absorbing. Boys who are quietly asking, what will happen to me if I fall? Will anyone catch me? Will anyone see me? The world that we build now is the world that these young boys are going to inherit. And if we build a world that leaves men behind, we're teaching those boys that their humanity is conditional. That's not a lesson that we can afford to pass on. So how do we start this? Not with grand gestures, and it's not with sweeping reforms, though those may have their place. We start instead by considering small steps and starting personal. We start by noticing, by paying attention to the quiet ones, the ones who stopped showing up but didn't announce that they were leaving, the ones who shrug when you asked how they're doing and they just say, I'm fine. We start by listening, not just hearing, but listening for what's said and what's unsaid. We start by reaching out, not with pity, but with presence and curiosity, not to fix, but to witness. And we start by offering a kind of different masculinity, one that says it's okay to need, it's okay to feel, it's okay to fall and be helped back up again. You don't have to save the world, but you can save a moment, a conversation, a connection opportunity. And you can be the person who reminds a man that he's not alone, who reminds him that he's not forgotten, who reminds this person that he doesn't have to disappear to survive. It's not glamorous work, it's definitely not flashy work, but it's wholly sacred work, because in a world that leaves people behind, seeing someone is an act of rebellion, an act of love, an act of healing. And what about the men who already feel lost? The ones who have already retreated so far that reaching them feels impossible. Well, there's still hope in the midst of this. Because as long as someone is alive, there's this possibility of reconnection, of repair, of return. But it will take time. It will take patience. It will take 1,000 small, invisible acts of kindness. It will take showing up consistently, without any expectations, without any agenda. It will take offering respect before it's earned, not after. It will take creating spaces where men don't feel like they have to perform or impress or even pretend. It will take modeling vulnerability and not demanding it. It will take being your real self, not asking others to be real while you stay guarded. It will take integrity. It will take intimacy. Integrity, again, for me means aligning our words internally with our actions externally. It means saying that you matter and then acting like it. It means refusing to treat people like products, refusing to reduce men to their performance. It means recognizing that being human is enough. Intimacy means intimacy. Intimacy. I think that's clever. It's this willingness to be seen and to see others, to move beyond the surface and to enter the messy, the beautiful, terrifying terrain of real connection. And it's not easy, but it's necessary. Because without intimacy, there is no healing. Without intimacy, there is no hope. Without intimacy, we're just islands, separate and eroding alone. And haven't we had enough of that? The men that we forgot are not lost forever, but they will stay forgotten if we don't change, if we don't dare to see, if we don't dare to care. And the good news is change doesn't require a revolution. Change just requires a decision. The decision to notice, the decision to listen, the decision to stay. Not just once, but again and again and again, until the quiet ones know that they're not alone anymore. And until the ones who disappeared believe that they can reappear. Until the forgotten remember that they were never truly forgotten. They were just waiting to be seen. Who are we leaving behind? Too many. Too many, but it doesn't have to stay that way. We can bring them back, not by dragging them, not by shaming them, but by creating a world where no one has to earn the right to be seen, where their humanity is enough, and where real connection is real to them, where dignity is not a word but a given. See, the men that society forgot, they're still here. They're waiting, they're still hurting, but hoping. Not loudly, maybe not dramatically, but quietly and steadily. They're just waiting for a sign that it is safe to come back. So let's give them that sign, shall we? Let's build that bridge. And let's make sure that no one, no matter how silenced, no matter how scarred they are, let's make sure that no one is left behind again. Thanks for listening.